So about the title I went with for this video, total clickbait, I confess. I'm just trying to capitalize on the SEO and keyword searches. There really isn't a witch equivalent in East Asian occult philosophy, which makes it hard to identify as a witch when people ask, do you consider yourself a witch? However, what is part of Taoist occult philosophy is to adapt and be in harmony with your environment, to integrate. So, as an Asian American navigating a Western world, the closest identity marker I can think of would be witch. So, witch makes sense. With those caveats in place, yeah, sure, I definitely identify as a witch, but I do so more for your convenience, more for the convenience of communication in English. And not because I actually believe or culturally identify as a witch. I personally consider what I practice to be Taoist ceremonial magic, and I consider my religious faith to be Mahayana Buddhism. The word U in Mandarin Chinese, which is the same word as mu in Korean, as in mudang, is often translated into English as witch or shaman. It's more accurately shaman, though. By the way, this is how complicated language translations get. How do we translate mudang in Korean into Chinese? That's up for debate. One argument is mu in Korean and u in Chinese are the same word. Another argument is that mudang should be translated to saman, and saman is very specific. It's Manchurian shamanism to be distinguished and separated from Han Chinese shamanism. Bon, or in Mandarin, Bun Jiao. For convenience of reference is Tibetan shamanism, but perhaps more accurately is a folk religious practice with mystical magical elements that is sourced indigenously to the region of Tibet. That in Chinese, some consider a form of Wu and some do not. And so there's really no universal or unanimous consensus even within the culture. And so when you export what is still a disagreement out and try to integrate, harmonize, or translate into a different language, it gets really difficult. So yes, we're dealing first and foremost with the problem of words not translating effortlessly from one language to another, because words are born out of cultural ideologies, and the very foundational cultural ideologies at play are so different from one another that it's very hard to agree on sets of vocabulary as direct translations of each other. So what moniker or title do we use then? As it gets translated into English, you often see Taoist magic referred to as sorcery. I personally prefer ceremonial magic because in terms of communicating in English, when I say Taoist sorcery, you might not be conceptualizing the right thing in your mind. But when I say Taoist ceremonial magic, I feel a lot more confident that you are conceptualizing exactly the right thing, especially if you have any background in the Golden Dawn, Rosicrucianism, or any of that Francis Barrett, Eliphas Levi ilk. So calling it Asian witchcraft or Taoist magic today makes the most sense in terms of cross-cultural communication. For me personally and internally, how I self-identify, I don't use the moniker witch. I don't use any of those monikers, to be frank. Instead, I'll describe what I do, some of the key things that I feel I do that is of most importance to me. I will say I perform divination. I craft talismans. I practice law. I'm an illustrator. I aspire to be an artist. I'm an author. I'm a home cook. Love that. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I would self-identify as a witch if this is your definition of witch. A witch is someone positioned at a very specific, particular point on the autism or neurodivergent spectrum that separates us from ordinary ability sets or thought patterns. There's a neurological deformity, not the right word, deformity in our brains, no. There's a neurological aberration in our brains, and because of that neurological aberration, it means that maybe we have heightened psychic ability, heightened sensitivity to the spirit realms, and a hyper awareness during our dream states. It's maybe, I speculate, a particular phenotype, a set of observable characteristics and traits that's biochemical. We are differently abled. And so that particular spot on the spectrum of neurodivergence is what I would call witchcraft, or the identity of being a witch. And I do think to an extent you're born with it, but that doesn't mean you realize it right away. It doesn't mean you activate it. It doesn't mean you pursue it. Just like any talent, you might be born with certain talents and capabilities. It doesn't mean you pursue and nurture or develop to any degree of competency those innate talents and capabilities. So the identity of witch is similar to that. As for what is witchcraft, how I look at it at a broad strokes, generalized high level, is that the witch, the mystic, the occultist, what have you, is someone who consistently, as a matter of lifestyle, is aware of unseen influences on our physical material reality and possesses the knowledge of craft to influence those unseen influences. Witchcraft, then, is basically a form of chemistry or alchemy in which the primary focus when it comes to ingredients is the unseen influence and that the metaphysical correspondences. So invariably, divination is involved because divination is basically taking the temperature or using a barometer for assessing unseen influences. Witchcraft is a modality for achieving all the typical common goals that humans strive to achieve, like prosperity, safety, and health, a safe and healthy pregnancy, dealing with unwanted pregnancies, healing, and revenge. But the method of achieving those common goals, when we say witchcraft, is through the administration of unseen influences beyond the five physical senses and even beyond behavioral psychology. Something I've kind of been wondering about, though. Okay, here's my line of thinking. So I love philosophy. I read a lot about philosophy. I collect a lot of books on philosophy. Like, it's just a very big part of my life. I devote a lot of my time to studying philosophy. I like to discuss philosophy with people. It absolutely informs my worldview and the lens through which I see the world and how I try to understand and comprehend the world around me and my life experiences. But I wouldn't necessarily come out and say, hi, I'm a philosopher, you know? Why not? Why wouldn't I say, hi, I'm a philosopher? It's probably not. It's definitely because I don't have a PhD in philosophy. And I think on some level in my brain, I feel like I need to have a doctorate in philosophy or some equivalent, some training, or maybe published books, published texts. I need to have some qualification that's very tangible and measurable by universal or somewhat quasi-universal mainstream standards to designate me as a philosopher. And if I don't have those, I don't feel comfortable saying something like, hi, I'm a philosopher. So does that translate here when I'm talking about witch? I have deliberately chosen not to participate in any lineaged traditions or practice my craft in group settings or receive a formal regimented modality or tradition of study in witchcraft or ceremonial magic, and wonder if on some level that's the reason I don't feel comfortable claiming the title of witch or let alone priestess. And if that's the case, that's definitely something I have to unpack. On the other hand, not having or needing a label to identify the occult work I do and how integrated it is into my lifestyle, how immutable of a characteristic it feels, does kind of actually make sense because it obscures the occult practice even further and safeguards the practice even more. Asian witchcraft, if there is to be a thing identified as such. I think I can only speak to East Asian modalities of witchcraft. They tend to be Taoist influenced, and Shinto, for example, is a cultural theological form of the Tao. Taoism is a philosophy, but there is a mystical theological component to Taoism that runs parallel to the philosophy. If the philosophy of Taoism is how you engage with nature, with core principles for understanding the states of nature, then Taoist mysticism or its magical systems are about how you engage with spirits, with core principles for understanding the states of the spirit realms. Taoist ritual magic is premised on a holistic system of metaphysical correspondences requiring a fairly comprehensive understanding of Taoist cosmology and applying that knowledge in a methodical way in ritual or ceremony, on the belief that such ceremony or performance of will can produce spiritual changes that in turn produce physical changes. A book of methods or some form of personal grimoire is necessary to the extent that we're human and need to write down what we've learned so that we can build on foundations of learning and learn more. Taoist ceremonial magic encompasses systems of ritual for bringing spirit entities into our world and for banishing spirit entities out of our world. There are rituals you have to learn for changing the current energy makeup of persons, places, and things or objects. For example, forms of purification and consecration. So for convenience, you can call that Asian witchcraft. And someone who practices ritual in adherence to Taoist cosmological principles, a Taoist witch.